Yeah, I'm not sure you'd call her first if that was your reason for calling her. So I think there's more to it than that. And also, for a year prior to this incident, he was sober. So that wasn't an issue for this particular day. But quickly, you mentioned in the last 2 minutes, you began to understand why she was called. What happened? What part of her testimony led you to think, okay, now I can kind of see why the state called her?
Because she started talking about the incident at hand. She started talking about it. She's still not done talking about it, but I can see why the prosecution, because up until that point, she was just establishing a pattern of a terrible relationship between their parents, right? So up until that point, it's almost like a Rorschach test. Like if you're a defendant, and if you're in the jury and you've witnessed domestic abuse, you're gonna almost always sympathize with the woman. Almost always, right? Juries, when you look at a domestic abuse situation, very rarely do you sympathize with the husband. So that's why I was baffled up until the end. And at the end, I started seeing her testify about the actual incident at hand. And based on the way the balance of her testimony comes out, she might be able to break, kind of foreclose certain options for the defense later when they give their theory of how the incident happened, right? So that's why I started to kind of shed light. And now I started saying, oh, I get it, because she's going to testify about the actual incident. The prosecution must know what she's going to say, and what she's going to say, the prosecution believes it's going to help them. That's why I started to kind of change my mind.